What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Turf Watch. It is week number 12 of the NFL season, and I can't believe it. But that is not the only thing I can't believe, and I'm sure you know we're going to address the elephant in the room today. We all know what we're talking about. You know what I said last week? I said, no matter what, you don't fire your offensive coordinator while you're still in the hunt like this. And what happened? Matt Canada is gone. He is no longer the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, that's the bad news, or could be good news. It depends on how you look at it. The good news is that grandma got out of the cage in perfect timing for this year's Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a great time this year. I know I did, but this is great to see. Portersburg grandmother got out of the cage. She is free for Thanksgiving, so that is huge to see. Well, let's just hop into it this week. We know the matchup. It's the Steelers versus the Bengals, the divisional matchup that we look forward to every season. But this one's being clouded by the Matt Canada firing and the fans. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know how optimistic you are, but I think this is what you had to do. I mean, you look at Kenny Pickett's stats in the last few weeks, it hasn't been great. It's really been ugly, if we're being quite honest. It's been 5 weeks since October 22nd when they played in Los Angeles against the Rams, where he had 230 yards, no touchdowns, 68% completion, which was also his best of the season. Things haven't been looking good for Kenny Pickett. And at this point in the season, when you're still in the hunt, still up there in the AFC North, you had to make a decision. And it was either giving up on the first round quarterback that you took last year, or it's given up on the offense coordinator who hasn't put up more than 30 points in 40 weeks at this point. You had to make this move. I know it's shocking. You probably all saw the tweets going around that Pittsburgh Steelers haven't fired a coach midseason since 1941. And this coach who was fired in 1941 fired himself because he was a part owner. Pretty insane here. Just shows the consistency of the Pittsburgh Steelers and their commitment to winning and having excellent coaches every year. Of course, this is going to go down in history of the Steelers as probably the worst offensive coordinator hiring of all time. Uh, I do feel for Matt Canada. He's been dealing with a lot all season, all last season, and he lost his job. You never root for someone to lose their job. I know last week I said I wouldn't want to see it. Uh, am I more hopeful than I was before? Yes. Am I super ecstatic that this guy is no longer in the NFL, no longer has a job? Not really. I feel for the guy, but he's going to be just fine. I know he's going to be just fine. So let's just take a look at this statement that Coach Tomlin put out. When I personally saw this, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was from a meme account. I didn't think this was real. I just never saw it coming. Statement from Mike Tomlin. He says Matt Canada has been relieved of his duties as offense coordinator. I appreciate Matt's hard work and dedication, and I wish him the best moving forward in his career. Of course, the comments were interesting. Steelers fans of just the NFL in general, have known for a while that this guy is probably the worst coordinator in the NFL. So there's no surprise in this comments down here. You got some funny gifs, tearfully crying, like I can't believe this happened. This guy says, I got a feeling Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. Hashtag good riddance. It happened, holy cow, midseason. I think that was everyone. Just like that, people are optimistic again. They're feeling great. Just last week after that loss, it was an ugly loss to the Browns. People are saying this team's awful. They're never going to make the playoffs. Kenny Pickett's a bust. Uh, and the Matt Canada should be fired chance. They came back. People were tweeting it out. You saw it everywhere. And they actually listened, which was shocking. Just completely shocking. I don't really know what else to talk about this week. There hasn't been a ton of people talking about this Steelers-Browns matchup. And I think that's partly because of the question marks going around. Jake Browning will be starting for the Bengals. The Bengals season at this point is pretty much over. We don't really know what to expect. Jamar Chase didn't have a really good game last week without Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon, always talented running back, but he's lost a little bit of his pop that he once had. And then, like I said, Jake Browning, a quarterback who you have no clue how good he's going to do. Um, we saw what happened last week. We didn't really know what DTR was going to do. I wouldn't say he lit us up through the air. The offense just couldn't get anything going. They couldn't do a thing. Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about this game. I think this is a Matt Canada episode. We talk about why this move needed to be made. We're seeing what people are saying about it. Here's the tweet right here. Matt Canada spent 44 games as a Steelers offense coordinator. Under him, they have produced 0 games with 400 plus yards, the only team in the league to do such a thing in that time span. They've had 1 game with 300 plus passing yards. They've had 2 games with 30 plus points, 7 games with 2 plus passing touchdowns, 27 games with 20 first downs or less, and 28 games with 20 points or less. And he says, unbelievably bad. Yeah, this is unprecedented for the modern NFL. You don't see teams putting up these numbers. It's just sad that I think a decent amount of these games were with Ben Roethlisberger, and we see that his last season, when he still had some talent in him, he had the worst coordinator going for him. He had an awful center in front of him with Kendrick Green. I know Deeks talk about it all the time on the show and how Ben was sabotaged. And you look at these numbers and you see what Kenny's been doing. You got to agree with him. I mean, you never gave the dude a fair shot here. Now, I know a lot of people are saying Kenny Pickett isn't the guy. And if I'm being honest, just from watching him, completely unbiased, he is not the guy. But to be fair, he looks completely different than he did last year. This is night and day. Kenny had some swagger to him last year. He had some grit. He was an accurate quarterback. That was the whole thing when we drafted him. He doesn't have some crazy arm. He's not some huge athletic dude, but he is accurate and he'll make those passes. And he just hasn't been doing that this year. So I think there might be some underlying injury, maybe some concussion issues still lingering. I mean, you saw what's been going on with Brock Purdy. Had those 2-3 weeks where he was throwing interceptions, looked awful after his concussion, and now he's been lighting it up again. I don't know if Kenny's is maybe a little bit longer because this accuracy is unlike him, and it's been bad if we're just being honest right now. So with Matt Canada being fired, the person calling the plays for the Steelers will essentially be Mike Sullivan, who is the quarterback coach. He knows Kenny better than anyone else. And running back coach Eddie Faulkner will take over as the offensive coordinator. So they're going to work in collaboration to maybe uh, change these plays up, maybe do something a little bit. But the playbook's not going to change. It's going to be very similar plays. I don't see a ton of things changing, but I'm hoping the execution might. From what I've seen, Mike Sullivan, Eddie Faulkner, their play calling is very similar. I I don't know. I'm worried, if I'm being honest. I'm worried. I think you're going to see a change after this offseason. I don't see either of these guys as long-term options. But Eddie Faulkner has been fantastic as a running backs coach. You've seen what he's done with Jalen Warren. You see how much better they've been at running the ball this year. So I do have hope there. I'm feeling good about that. Mike Sullivan, he's been a name who's been floated around for a while as the person to assume the position of offense coordinator after Canada. But he's not a guy that I would personally want moving forward next year. But what are you going to do right now? You're still in the hunt. You got to fight to win these remaining games. The schedule's pretty easy. So this is as good as it's going to get right now. And we just got to cross our fingers and hope that they keep winning. All right, we've talked enough about this last week. We've talked enough about Canada and the Browns game. I don't really want to talk about it a whole lot. So let's just get into the Steelers-Bengals game, some things that you should look forward to in this upcoming matchup. First one being that T. Higgins is going to be out for another week. He will not be playing this game. Cam Taylor-Britt, their cornerback, he will also be out as well. So that goes another mark on the checklist for the Steelers that will help them. Joey Porter Jr. today told the media that he thinks he will shadow Jamar Chase on Sunday. So like I said, Jamar hasn't been doing too good. Joey Porter has been doing excellent as a rookie cornerback this year. I think he's going to do just fine locking up Jamar. I don't think Browning's going to be able to get it to him. Here's something from PFF. This is this week's game. They say if the Steelers win this game, they have a 76% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, it drops down to a 39% chance. That is pretty big. It seems like the last couple weeks, ever since the Titans game, every game has had huge implications on making the playoffs. Of course, when you win two, lose, win two, lose, win two, lose, that's how it's been all year. Things are going to go back and forth a lot. But this game, super important. Going to have to win this one and hope that the offense doesn't drop back. I'd be shocked if that happened. I'd be shocked if they were worse than when Canada was the coordinator. But there are a lot of unpredictable things. They're still trying to figure this out in just a 6-day span. It's going to be tough, but I do feel optimistic about this one. Someone who doesn't feel as good about the Pittsburgh Steelers this week is DraftKings Sportsbook, and they have the Steelers as 1.5-point favorites, over under 35.5. At least they're favorites. At least they're predicted to win. But man, 1.5 points against this Bengals team who honestly doesn't have a lot to play for at this point. Your star quarterback's out. You never took the time to get a really good backup. So your season's over. That's just the truth here. They don't have much to play for. It is a home game. The Steelers are coming in with the no offense coordinator pretty much. So yeah, things are interesting. Over under 35.5, a little bit higher than last week. But 1.5, what would you put this at? If I was a odds maker, I would have Steelers at least minus 3.5. I know it's not that much different, but I think this is disrespectful here. I think the Steelers, of course, will be a close game. There hasn't been any games this season. There won't be any games this season where they run away with it. But 1.5, I just don't see that happen. I think the Steelers cover this one. Over under, not so sure about that one. Who knows? Last week I said over, and it wasn't even close. They scored 26 points. So what do I know? I don't really know much about that, but I do think the Steelers win this game. Here's something fascinating. David Carr, brother of Derek Carr, he said this week that the Pittsburgh Steelers will unleash their full potential of offense against their divisional rival Cincinnati, with interim offensive coordinator Eddie Faulkner and new offensive play caller Mike Sullivan replacing Matt Canada. The move pays off for Kenny Pickett, who goes for 300 plus yards and a trio of touchdowns in a Pittsburgh win. I don't know if David's watched a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers football or a lot of Kenny Pickett football, but I would be shocked if this happens. I'd love to see it. I really would, but this is a really bold prediction from a national media guy. I don't know about this one. Apparently, he also picked the Saints to win the Super Bowl. 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, a win. Let's keep it real. I still think that's a bit overly optimistic. 2 touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns in one game in his career. I was the biggest Kenny guy for a while. I thought he was a future Hall of Famer. I was overly optimistic. I was a homer. You could say everything you want about me, but I've watched this guy 252 touchdowns, a win. I'll take the win. That's all I care about. Here's another national media thing before we wrap this up on Kenny Pickett and a little bit more optimism on the guy that you probably haven't been seeing online. He says Kenny Pickett has been given nothing to work with when it comes to scheme. So to sit here and say he's on the chopping block, I would disagree with that. I actually think that the decision to fire Matt Canada is a sign that this organization truly does believe in Kenny Pickett, which is the truth. The organization wouldn't have fired Matt Canada. They would have moved on from Pickett if they thought the opposite. So they do believe in Pickett. I hope they do. You drafted him a couple years ago in the first round. You got to stick with him at least the rest of this year. These upcoming games are massively important for the future of his career and if he's going to be a Steeler starting quarterback or if he's going to be a backup for the rest of his career. It's going to be interesting to see. I know that he's still got it. I know that he's still that player. It just hasn't been there this season. But we can cross our fingers. We can believe what Dan Orlovsky says, or we can be a hater and be negative every single week and just root for a new person to lose their job every week, which isn't what I'm about, isn't what anyone should be about. So let's just get this win this weekend. Let's not worry about it. Bengals, roll through them. Offense, let's keep it cooking. No Matt Canada, no more excuses. The time is now. Pittsburgh Steelers, Stairway to 7 starts now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm going to wrap this one up here. If you see any awful takes between this week and next week, make sure you send them to me. I'll make sure to feature them on this show. And we're going to keep holding these people accountable. So until next time, this has been Turf Watch. I'm Don Farrow. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video, and we'll talk next week. Peace.